Morning guys, how are you today? Working on computer stuff here a little bit this morning. I finished up that corn hybrid sheet last night that I was showing you yesterday, and now I'm working on the soybeans. One of the things that's a little bit different with the soybeans is we need to figure out where we want to plant wheat this fall before I place the soybean varieties, because obviously we want to plant our earlier maturing soybeans where we're going to plant wheat so we can get them combined earlier and get them out. Which means that I'm now placing and planting crops for the 2021 crop year, and it's January of 2020 here. So that's a little bit difficult, but I'm trying to work on that right now. Okay, so here's my spreadsheet for, I just filtered it for just the soybeans, and over here you'll notice this last column, I've got a column that says wheat in 21, and then I kind of just put in a yes for the fields that we want. The tricky thing is figuring out which fields should go to wheat. A couple of these we don't ever plant wheat in just because the soil type's not good for wheat, and other ones, I want to try and make sure that we're on a decent rotation, because we don't plant a third of our crop to wheat, a third to corn, a third to beans. So it's not a straight 3-year rotation. We're typically more of like a 2/5, 2/5, 1/5. So the wheat would be like every 5 years we would plant wheat there or something. I'm going to keep working on this here for a little bit this morning. I did call about our motor for the power washer here this morning, and they said, oh yeah, we took that apart last week. It's burnt up. It's no good. Thanks for calling and telling me. So we got to find a new motor, basically. They were going to look around and see if they can't get some prices, but I'm going to go pick up the carcass of what's left and get the model number off it so I can do some searching and see what I can find too, I think. So I'll probably do that around lunchtime, and maybe we'll go somewhere else and see if we can't find something. I don't know if I can just stick any 5-horse electric motor in there that will work, or if it's got to be the right size because of the space requirements and stuff for that power washer. So that's where I'm at with that project. I'm not real happy they didn't call me to tell me that, but hey, at least we know what we're dealing with now. So okay, well, I think I've got all of the soybeans placed. Soybeans are also a little bit trickier because we don't like to split boxes, so our beans come in 40 unit boxes, and as much as possible to keep it in 40 unit intervals is helpful, but that's pretty difficult to do sometimes. So then you got to think about, well, what field is this going into? What field am I most likely to plant before or after this one that we could use the same variety so we don't have to empty the planter? And it gets a little complicated sometimes, but I think I've got at least a pretty good start on stuff, and I figured out where we want to plant wheat. So I got the early beans there, so we'll be able to get our wheat planted, hopefully, in good, timely fashion next year. Okay, time to get back to doing something maybe a little more useful. Well, I shouldn't say useful, but you know what I mean. Productive, something. So I was looking at this power washer. Since we've got to get a new motor, I want to make sure that whatever we get is going to fit. I don't have that old motor to be able to search for model numbers and that kind of stuff, and so really any 5-horse electric motor should work as long as it's got the right shaft and the right speed and all that stuff. So I was just kind of measuring the space that we've got to put it into. I'm going to head down to the shop where we took that motor and at least get the old one and see if they've got anything on hand there that will work. If not, we'll start shopping, I guess. If any of you were wondering, Phil's still hauling corn. We're filling our overhead right now so he can load up more trucks to head out. This corn's coming out of the big bin in the back there, comes through this drag, and then we run it back through our pit. That's just how we get it back to the leg there. Okay, so here's what I found out about our power washer motor. The old motor is bad, it's burnt out. And they can get me a new one at the shop where I took it. Sounds like it's gonna be a little over $500, which he had initially told me $1,000. So I don't know if that was to ease the burden or the shock of it being $500 or what, but at least it's not $1,000. So he's gonna get it. They will have it tomorrow. So we wait again, and there's not much that I can do to this tractor in the meantime. So while I'm waiting, I'm going to keep working on the computer. We're going to start building some prescription maps. So today's video is mostly a computer and technology video, I guess, and I'm going to show you how I build our prescription maps. Okay, I'm getting ready to start making these prescription maps up, and I'm going to kind of walk you through the process. So I'll show you what I'm looking at here. Over here, I've got my spreadsheet that's got all of my varieties and what fields they're going into. And then over here on this screen, I'm working with my Apex program. So Apex is our kind of AMS, it's John Deere's program. Well, used to be John Deere's program that they use for yield maps and all that kind of stuff. I still use it for my prescriptions because, quite frankly, my John Deere Operations Center, their new web-based system, doesn't do what I need it to do, or at least I haven't figured out how to yet. And then down here in front of me, this is kind of the key to this whole thing. These are an Excel spreadsheet that I get from Golden Harvest. It's got our varieties or hybrids that we plant. I've got 2 sheets with a bunch of different ones on there. You input what you think the price of corn is going to be for next year. I've left it at $4. And then we put in yield environments here. So I've got 5 different yield zones, basically 120 bushel per acre, 30 bushel increments, all the way up to 240. And then you put your seed costs in here, which I've blacked out because you guys don't need to know my seed costs. And it kind of spits out a range of what population you should be planting to get that kind of a yield with these prices and everything figured in. Pretty handy little tool to have here. So like this 09A86, say we're in a really high yielding zone, we should be planting anywhere from 34.2 to 37.7, which is still a pretty wide range. But you can see how much it varies from this 09Y24 or even this 10T63 over here, where the top of that is 32,000. So these are just kind of a recommendation. I tend to be towards the higher end of those, but I vary that depending on the product a little bit and what I know about it. So what I need to do is have a yield map or a composite map that pulls up and incorporates all of the year's yield data that we have for any given field. And so if you look over here, we've got a field that we've got all these years, and then at the bottom I have composite maps. And this bottom one right here is 2008 through 2017 corn. Well, if I come up here and click on this 2018, well, it was soybeans. 2019, it was wheat, so we don't have any more corn yields. So this is the map that I want. I'm gonna click on that, and it's gonna open up here. Apex is really slow. That is the biggest downfall with this program. But it's going to open up this map. Now, this is kind of an interesting one. Long story on this field as to why it's so different. But the fact remains, this is what we've got. And remember those yield zones that we had here? Well, they match up to my scale down here. So we've got less than 120 is red, mostly just along this fence row and a couple of little pockets. And then the orange is 120 to 150, the yellow 150 to 180, green 180 to 210, and then the blue is all 210 plus average. So this is a pretty good farm for us, most of it. And then what I do is hit this create button, and we want to create a prescription. So we're going to use a contour map, which is the map that we've got up here. So we'll hit next. And then we're going to give it a name. It's our 2020 corn pop, seed by seeding count, 2020 crop year, product type is corn, the product name, this is where we refer back to this sheet. So we're in this field, 2-1 is 09A86. Hopefully I got this set up in there. 09A86 right there. Units is seeds per acre. Loss of GPS rate, this is in case we lose GPS, what default rate do we want? And I'm going to put 32,000 in there, and I'm going to put that in this one as well. I could select a field boundary. I'm not going to because there's no reason to, and that screws me up later in future years for doing different stuff. So then we hit next, and then we get those zones with a spot to fill in the rate. So that's where I refer back to this sheet and say, okay, we're 09A86. Our lowest yielding zone of 120 bushel, we should be 28,300 to 31,200. So let's go ahead and just type in 31,200, and we'll go down to the next one. We'll move up to 33,500. And then the next one is 35,300, 36,600, and 37,700. Now I can tweak those a little bit. I may come back and do that, but for now that's where we're going to leave it. This hybrid requires high population. So those numbers may sound very high to you. They are in fact high, but that's just this hybrid. So they're not all that way as you can see. Then we hit next. It's gonna save those eventually. Okay, so there's our prescription map. So now if I click back down here on the legend, you'll see that those are all filled in there. And then I'll take this off of the computer and I'll upload it to our 2630 in the planning tractor, and it will follow this map and change the populations as we go through the field. So that's more or less the process that I'm going to follow for all of these fields. I'll go through and make up a map like that. I also will make up a variable rate starter map for our starter fertilizer and a variable rate nitrogen map for when we side dress and high dress on. I basically follow the exact same process. Determining rates is a little bit different, but I can walk through that a little bit when I do it too. So that's what I'm working on here this afternoon. It's going to take me a while. Okay, I've gotten to a field that I don't have a composite map for with corn yield history, so I'm going to show you how I do that. So basically with Apex here, I've got all the years that we have some sort of data for here along the side. For example, if I click on 2008 harvest, that was corn, and then I can click on this dry yield, and it will pop up a map. So this was the yield map from way back in 2008. 2009 we had soybeans, 2010 was corn again, so here is that map coming. Basically I just layer these, maybe. Again, Apex is really slow. There it is. And you can see the similar trends. They're a little different, but we got an area here that's no good, an area over here that is really good, drowned out holes in the middle. Now this has been fixed because this is the farm that we tiled this year. Okay, so 11 was beans, 12 was partially corn. So we're gonna open that map up and it layers in on the top. Now the scale is different, which is why that one looks so weird. 13, the whole farm was corn, so we'll put that in there. This is a big field too, so there's a lot of data points to it. But basically I just layer in all the years here, so I'll come back to you when I get them all open. Okay, now that I've got all of the maps layered on there, you can see them down here in the bottom corners, all the layers. We come back down here to this corner, and there's this button right here. It says generate a composite map, and we are going to create an average map. So it averages all the layers together. Composite name is going to be 2008 through 2019 corn, and we'll hit save. And this process takes a very long time because there's so much data that is putting together there, but when it's done I'll show you the composite that we generated. Okay, there's our composite yield map. Scale is down there. You can see that one's been a pretty good farm, and this is our irrigated farm, so this is one that we're pushing. After I get another good year irrigated data, I'm going to start sorting out some of the older stuff, the older yield maps that don't have irrigated stuff in there, because it really does change the potential of this field. So, but now we can use this for making our prescription maps, just like I have been. So another point of interest in this field that we're doing right now, I have two different hybrids out there, and there's a significant number of each. It's not quite half and half, but close. So when I'm making these prescription maps up, I need to take that into account. Either I need to make two separate maps, one for each hybrid, if they're vastly different, or what I'm doing here is looking down at this sheet. So it's this hybrid and this hybrid, and while they're not identical, they're both on the high end of the spectrum. So the bottom end's the same, and then this one just doesn't go up quite as high as this 09A86 does. So I'm just going to make one and kind of split the difference, or because I know this is an irrigated farm, I'll probably keep the populations up and push it a little bit. But yeah, that's, you know, if I had this, or well, let's say this hybrid and this hybrid, there's no way I could make one map that would satisfy both of those. So I would make two different ones, put the hybrid in the title of it so that I could switch when I switched varieties. While I'm making my seeding prescriptions. I'm also making starter and NH3 prescriptions. So you'll see down here, I just 2020 starter, and this one's a product mix by volume. The product is my starter. It's a tank mix that I've already got set in there. Gallons per acre. My loss of GPS rate is at 15, so then I hit next. And for this, I'm just doing 10, 12 and a half, 15, 17 and a half, and 20 gallons per acre. And then we hit save. So then that gives me my average here of 17.3 gallons per acre. We go back over here to this spreadsheet, and where I've got this 15 as my standard, I'll type in 17.3. I've also got this spreadsheet then set up to calculate out how much I need. So on that field, I will need 3,000 gallons of starter. Basically 2,000 of that will be my 1225O. 950 of it will be ammonium thiosulfate, and then I'm going to need about 50 gallons of boron for my starter blend. These two columns are just kind of the starter, or the boron gallons and ounces, because that's how I was measuring it out. Last year I was using a little bit less, and it was a little more specific. So then I go and make in my anhydrous recommendation, and I got to go in and make one up just like I did here, and I'll put that average rate in this column here, and then you know, like, so this last fields, it'll calculate out how much anhydrous it's going to take to do each of those fields. So one thing to note, this is kind of the next field that I was working on, and if you is it this map? No. If you notice that there's hardly any blue on this field at all. Well, the scale is the same on all of these fields. I use the same breakdown for each color, means the same thing. It's kind of my equalizer to show me which fields are better than others. The more greens and blues there are, the better the field. The more reds and oranges, the worse. Yellow is somewhere in the middle. And so by doing that, it allows me to use this same scale and yield environment on all of them. So most of the time, there's hardly any red. It's usually just on the edges or trees or corners or something. And a lot of times, there's hardly any blue. So really, I'm working with the three zones in the center, and things aren't quite as extreme as they may seem to be. Okay, well, it's almost time for me to go home, and I've had enough sitting in front of this computer for today. That is the one thing about this, is it takes a long time. It's tedious. I don't like to sit down and just do it all at once. I'll work on it for an hour or two at a time and then go do something else, which is why I like being able to be right back and forth between the shops so easy, because it's right there. It's easy to go back and forth and work on a tractor for a while and then come in here and sit down and work on this for a while and go back and forth. Anyway, I hope that you gained out of this the fact that you know, there's a lot more that goes into this than you would think. And I know that not everybody does all of this, and even if they do, there's no right or wrong way to do this necessarily. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is absolutely the way that it has to be done. It's just the best way that I've found to do it, to make those seeding rate prescriptions and the starter and the anhydrous and all that other stuff. So good or bad, I think I'm doing a good thing. I think it's helping. It doesn't seem to be hurting anything, and I think that we're saving some resources in certain areas and pushing areas that can be pushed a little bit harder. So I'm sure that everybody else that's doing this does it a different way, and that's perfectly fine. So anyway, point is, there's a lot more to it than you would think. There seems to be this stigma out there that farmers are not real intelligent, let's say. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Well, it takes a lot more computers and stuff than you would think, and so hopefully you guys learned something out of that today. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I know a lot of this gets pretty deep into that and stuff, but like I said, I just kind of want to show it to show how advanced and technically thinking that we are on a lot of this stuff, and it's not just do it the way we did it 50 years ago, because that's the way that's always worked kind of mentality. So anyway, I am going to head home. We'll be back to work on this a little bit tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm judging FFA contests again, so I don't know if I'm going to make a video or not. If I'm just sitting in front of the computer doing the same thing over again, probably not going to put one out tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to get that power washer motor back in time to do anything with it tomorrow, so It might be a couple of days before you see another video from me. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good night. Like, subscribe, and leave me some comments down below. We'll see you later. Have a good night.